Okay, let's. I literally need a man. I need a man. Help. All right, I'm gonna get pliers. The lesbian solution. Okay, let's get started. I love me king. This is not really the most feminine moment for me. Not really me 2020 vibe, but it does proportionize me jant man hands. All right, no one thinks I'm cute. Let's get started. Okay, look, this video is about canceling, also known as cancel culture, formerly known as called out culture. And I know you kids know all about this. But before we dive in, I have to explain the basics to me fellow boomers. So listen up, oldies. In the lingo of these young, avocado-guzzling smartphone addicts who killed Applebys, canceling is only shaming, vilifying, and ostracizing of prominent members of a community by other members of that community. Like so much internet slang, this use of the word canceling started out on Black Twitter, where a few years ago people, well, mostly women, would tweet canceler, Kelly and things like that. You know, it started out as this vigilante strategy for bringing justice and accountability to powerful people who previously had been immune to any consequences for their actions. For example, the Me Too movement promised to use social media shaming to topless sexually abusive men in power who couldn't be held accountable any other way. The promise of canceling was that it was going to give power back to people who had known and bring justice to prominent abusers. It's in a way the 21st century version of the guillotine, the bringer of justice, the people's avenger. But also like the guillotine, it can become a sadistic entertainment spectacle. And I want to make the case that we do have, well, a teensy bit of a reign of terror situation on our hands, gorge. Now there's a version of this conversation that's already been had to death, and it goes like this. On the one side are a bunch of male comedians who constantly bitch about how cancel culture is out of control. You can't joke about anything anymore without these millennial jackals trying to get you in trouble. And the other side is mostly progressive think piece authors who argue that there's no such thing as cancel culture. It's just that powerful people are finally being held accountable for their actions, and they can't and the king handle it, so they go around bitching about cancel culture. Now, unfortunately, neither of those viewpoints is quite as correct as some people might hope. Neither of those. Some people car so it's a good thing I'm here to deliver the truth. He didn't know he was transgender. Story time, emotional, not clickbait. Let's start with an example. The most high-profile YouTube canceling of 2019 was the canceling of James Charles. And again, I know you kids remember this, but I have to reheat ancient YouTube tea for the elders. Put the kettle on, Karen. So James Charles is a 20-year-old beauty guru, which means boomers. Look, there's these people who make YouTube videos teaching you how to do makeup. It's worth checking out if you can figure out how to start up Internet Explorer. I certainly can't. It's pretty bomb, it's lit, it's groovy, it's fab, it's far out. Man, it's, I guess, I fully dig it. Free love, give peace a chance, Nixon's a fascist. So back in May of this year, James, colleague and mother figure, fellow YouTube beauty guru Tati Westbrook, uploaded a 40-minute video accusing James of endorsing a different brand of hair vitamins than the brand that was a competitor of her brand of hair vitamins. An enthralling plot line, I know. And this was huge. This was covered in the New York Times. And while Tati was at it, almost as an afterthought to the hair vitamin dispute, she also accused James of being a sexual predator. Now we actually went back and checked Tati's original deleted video, and she actually never uses the phrase sexual predator. It's funny, I remember her calling him that because that became the story on Twitter. But what she actually said was, James had tried to trick straight men into thinking they were gay. Oh me God, you tried to trick yet man into thinking he's gay yet again, which is pretty different from calling him a sexual predator. But see, this is what cancel culture does. It takes one story and transforms it into a significantly different story. You know, the headline it would write about the James and Tati story might read, Tati Westbrook accuses James Charles of trying to trick straight men into thinking they were gay. But cancel culture transforms that story into the headline, James Charles is a sexual predator. Interesting. Now we want to make it clear that my intention here is really not to defend James Charles. I'm not a James Charles stan. I'm a biological female in my 30s. Close to death, no. Please leave a comment before ID. That said, I don't think the statement, James Charles is a sexual predator, is a stretch to say the least. At least based on the information I have in December 2019. So let's analyze how this kind of truth stretching happens. Cancel culture trope 1. Well, culture and you should be writing this down, class, because this will be on the test. Cancel culture trope 1. Cancel culture presumption of guilt. They're a traditional understanding of justice according to which, before you condemn or punish a person, you hear the accuser's side of the story and the accused side of the story. You allow both sides to present evidence, and only after everyone involved has had a chance to make their case do you pass sentence and punish the convict. Punish me, king. Drinking this is punishment enough. Am I uncancelled yet? Please. Now, the United States of We legally have the presumption of innocence, but canceling does not abide by the law. Canceling is a form of vigilante mob justice, and a lot of times an accusation is proof enough. Now that's basically the point of the progressive slogan, believe victims. It's a norm that was put into place in progressive spaces because out in the world at large, people generally don't believe victims. but I think it's pretty obvious how believe victims is a norm that's easy to abuse. Was Tatey really James' victim? No, she's not some powerless woman abused by a prominent man in her industry. She's on top of the industry, and she wasn't victimized by James at all. I see this case more as she weaponized cancel culture against a business rival. Anyway, before James had even had a chance to respond to Tatey's accusation, the story had already gone from Tatey Westbrook accuses James Charles of trying to trick straight men to James Charles tried to trick straight men. And from there, it was generalized into James Charles is toxic and manipulative, which brings us to cancel culture trope 2, abstraction. Abstraction replaces the specific, concrete details of a claim with a more generic statement. In the transition from Tatey Westbrook accused James Charles of trying to trick straight men to James Charles is toxic and manipulative, we've lost not only the sense of this being an unverified accusation, but we've also lost all the specific details. James Charles is toxic and manipulative is an incredibly vague statement. It may as well be James Charles is bad. But even without the presumption of guilt, if someone tells me James Charles is accused of toxic and manipulative behavior, I'm gonna think, oh, that sounds pretty bad. And I'm gonna start speculating about the specifics, and whatever me imagination comes up with is likely going to be worse than whatever he's actually accused of. Also, the specific accusation that he tried to trick straight men into thinking they were gay is self-evidently kind of questionable. How do you trick straight men into thinking they were gay? If you find out, let me know. It's bad and I'm super bad. This is not a problem that straight men usually seem to have. At the very least, it requires further explanation. It's a kind of story that sounds like it has more than one side. So I am immediately gonna feel a little bit skeptical of the accusation. Skeptical of a little bit. Definitely and I'm also gonna side Tatey Westbrook, because this accusation is setting off my homophobia detection alarm. Leave the gays alone. But I'm not gonna have an opportunity to pick up on the potential homophobia and be skeptical of it if all I've heard about the situation is James Charles is toxic and manipulative. And I also want to point out a linguistic shift that's happening here. When the claim was James Charles tried to trick straight men, the verbs in the sentence were tree and trick. So what we re-criticizing here is James's behavior. We re-criticizing things he did, allegedly trying to trick straight men. But once the claim morphs into James Charles is toxic and manipulative, the verb in the sentence is to be. So these adjectives are characteristics of James, and it's now not his actions we re-criticizing, but his personality, his toxicity, his manipulativeness. This is what I'll call cancel culture trope 3, essentialism. Essentialism, when we go from criticizing a person's actions to criticizing the person themselves. We not just saying they did bad things, we saying they and that's what takes us from James Charles tried to trick straight men to James Charles is a sexual predator. So here we retargeting James himself, not just his actions, but the type of person he is, a sexual predator. And we've also really escalated the accusation because I don't know about you guys, but when I hear the phrase sexual predator, the image that comes to mind is a rapist or a child molester, maybe an abusive boss, not a teenage twink hung up on wanting to date straight guy. I mean, not that a person like that couldn't be a sexual predator, but I really don't think that he's a sexual predator is a fair summary of the accusation. So this seems to me like a pretty nasty and dishonest twisting of the story, and it happened instantaneously on Twitter. It totally dominated the conversation in a community of millions of people for weeks. In a few days, James had lost millions of subscribers, and who knows what effect it had on his personal life. And, oh, who was what? I uses so little well, so life. Not that anyone seems to care. In fact, most people seem to be enjoying his downfall. He was a teenage millionaire, a young, beautiful superstar, easy to envy, easy to resent, hard to relate to, hard to sympathize with. What was the point of canceling James Charles? Did we want to teach him a lesson? Did we want him to learn from his mistakes and grow as a person? Imagine actually wanting someone to learn. Someone you actually would say learn actually Imagine actually caring. My hunch is that the average YouTube viewer was not sincerely outraged and hurt by their sincere belief that James Charles was a sexual predator. In other words, this was not a case of triggered stos. This was a controversy manufactured from the top by a handful of seemingly vindictive and envious people. I honestly think that most of the James Charles is a sexual predator crowd just wanted to bring him down a peg. Cancel culture trope 4, pseudo-moralism or pseudo-intellectualism. In pseudo-moral or if you look at the world we live in, would you say that people are usually motivated by a sense of moral integrity and intellectual rigor? No, maybe not. Let's be real, America. We are a bunch of morally impotent, meat bags constantly shitting ourselves out of fear and lust. For Tatey calling out James, it was about the hair vitamins, right. I think Sis was super salty that this millionaire kid who she had supported and helped had betrayed her by endorsing a rival brand and accusing him of trying to trick straight men was just a twist of the knife. But moralism or intellectualism provide a funny pretext for the call out. You can pretend you just want an apology. You can pretend you're just a concerned citizen who wants the person to improve. You can pretend you're simply offering up criticism when what you're really doing is attacking a person's career and reputation out of spite, envy, revenge. I mean, it could be any motivation. Twitter viewed James as an overprivileged, spoiled little brat, and it was fun to wipe the smile off his smug face, at least for a few weeks. It's a schadenfreude, right? This kind of petty sadism. Maybe not the internet's proudest moment, but not the most shameful either. And that's not to say that everyone canceling James Charles was insincere, but there's a world of difference between canceller Kelly and cancel James Charles. And I'm interested to know how these two things came to look the same. When James was being cancelled, I remember being kind of transfixed by the sight of his life and career falling from the ski, full tailspin, black smoke spewing out. And a lot of me YouTube friends were like, lol, did you see James Charles is cancelled? Lol, lol, lol. But I looked up at James and I said, oh God, that's gonna be me someday. Stay strong, sister. Don't the bastards get you down. Get you. Let's switch over to White Claw. These are cute. These are fun. A little more of a feminine moment for me. They didn't even have these last time I was an alcoholic. I'm not even wearing makeup. I don't need makeup to serve a full biological fantasy. Keep drinking, people. We gonna make it through this together. So I was doing a little Twitter archaeology when I was looking into the James Charles canceling, and I found a bunch of tweets referencing earlier James Charles scandals. They all forgiving James Charles. He's still a transphobe. They all are acting like just because James Charles has receipts, he's no longer a racist transphobe. Like James Charles is racist, ableist, transphobic, and a sexual predator. A white woman. AI all are being too harsh on him and he's uncancelled. So according to Twitter, James Charles is not only a sexual predator, he's also a racist and a transphobe. That sounds pretty serious. Let's investigate. We'll start with the transphobia allocation. Cockerels of the jury, exhibit alpha. So you're not even full gay. I mean, no, there have been girls in the past that we thought were really, really beautiful. There's also been trans guys in the past, too, that I was really, really into for a moment in time. And I whoop, as I say on Twitter, Yanks. This ain't it, Chief. Friendly reminder that this isn't a good look. Maybe done to be transphobic. Disappointing. So James did fuck up here. The problem is he's suggesting that being attracted to trans men makes him less gay, which implies that trans men aren't really men, which is at odds with the way trans men understand themselves. So this does deserve criticism, no doubt, no doubt. However, what I see when I look at this clip of James is not a deed-in-the-wool transphobic bigot. I see a very young person who's still working on understanding his own sexuality and is trying to figure out where his attraction to trans men fits into that. And it seems to me that the proportionate response to that situation is for someone to take James' side and explain to him, look, here's why what you said is hurtful to trans men, and here are some tips on how to avoid saying that kind of thing in the future. You know, ignorance is not the same thing as hatred. Not understanding someone is not the same as wanting them dead. Of course, there are committed bigots who bit just a waste of time to engage with, but sometimes just talking to someone with a little patience and understanding is all it takes. But that's not what cancel culture does. Oh no, we have to immediately escalate every situation to the highest possible level of conflict. So by abstraction, we get James Charles made transphobic comments, and by essentialism, we get James Charles is a transphobe. We don't give him a chance to reflect. We don't give him an opportunity to learn. Him an opportunity to we go straight to branding him a bigot. Nonetheless, that same week, James posted an apology to his Insta story saying, regardless of whatever my intentions were, that came across as me saying I'm not fully gay because I have been with a trans man. And that is absolutely, first of all, not true. Like that doesn't make me not fully gay. But that stereotype and implication is really, really dangerous. And I'm very, very sorry. If you are a trans man, you are a man. If you are a trans girl, you are a woman. You are valid in your identity. Could you ask for a better apology? Like he not only apologizes for what he said, but he also demonstrates a clear understanding of why it was wrong. So does that mean people stopped calling him a transphobe? Of course not. Cancel culture trope 5, no forgiveness. Cancelers will often dismiss an apology as insincere, no matter how convincingly written or delivered. And of course, an insincere apology is further proof of what a Machiavellian psychopath you really are. Now, sometimes a good apology will calm things down for a while. But the next time there's a scandal, the original accusation will be raised again, as if you never apologized. And that's what happened to James during the Tatey scandal, when Twitter decided he was a transphobic sexual predator. And that's to say nothing of this racism I've been hearing about. Here's the receipts. Exhibit. In February 2017, when James was much less famous than he is now, he tweeted, I can't believe we're going to Africa today. What if we get Ebola? James, we fine. We could have gotten it at Chipotle last year. Okay, well, that's a little insensitive maybe. It's not really something an influencer should tweet. And fear of disease associated with Africa, I mean, I can see how it's in the same vague conceptual area as certain racist tropes. But clearly, this was intended as a joke about his friend mistaking Ebola for Cully right. And anyway, he did apologize, saying, as a white cis male, I recognize me privilege and would never want to take that for granted, but I fucked up. I feel awful for posting what I said. I understand why what I said was offensive and ignorant. And James hasn't made a habit of making jokes like that ever since. So, is this own tweet from 2 years ago that he apologized for, on its own, enough evidence for us to justify labeling him a racist? Well, according to cancel culture, absolutely. Abstraction takes us from 2 years ago. James Charles made a joke that referenced his fear of getting Ebola in Africa to James Charles made a racist joke. And then essentialism takes us to James Charles is a racist. I don't think that's racist. Look, I want to pause to say, I really do believe in social justice, at least as much as trash like me believes in anything. And believe me, I am well aware that jokes, irony, and even complaints about cancel culture are often used by bigots to cloak their real agenda. The Southern Poverty Law Center even cited me video about how far-right racists use jokes and memes and mockery of Joes as a way to camouflage their hateful beliefs and make them more palatable to a wider audience. So I'm coming at this from a place of genuine concern for anti-racism and anti-transphobia, as well as an awareness of the fact that cancel culture is often just a conservative red herring used to shut down any and all complaints about racism or transphobia. But I've also become very disillusioned with the way these accusations are thrown around so frivolously on social media. By the way, they were used to escalate conflict instead of promote understanding. And by the way, they sometimes weaponized to destroy people who have made mistakes but who really don't deserve to be destroyed. Now maybe you rethinking destroyed. What do you mean destroyed? James is a 20-year-old millionaire on his way to owning his own makeup empire, and you are completely correct. If you James Charles, if you a superstar, then being cancelled most likely does not destroy you. The cancelers blend into the general backdrop of haters, and they can set you back a few million subscribers and a lot of emotional turmoil, but in the long run, they can't really touch your success. But here's the thing. What if you not James Charles? What if you a small creator? What if you can't afford public relations help? What if you belong to a marginalized community and you rely on that community for support? Well, in that case, it's a whole different story. Let's irish up this coffee. Shaken, not stirred. Spilled it all over me pussy. That's good. Booze and coffee is a good combination. I am feeling amped right now. I am feeling hyped. So this is the part in the video where I should admit that I'm not just a casual observer here. At the time of making this video, sweetie, I'm super cancelled. You know, I try to make videos that are both informative and entertaining. So in this video, the information is you get to learn about cancel culture, and the entertainment is you get to watch a warm tree to wriggle off a hook. Let's get started. Forgive my Father, for I have sinned. For I have sinned. Hey, how are you? God, I never wanted to be the kind of YouTuber who would resort to making videos about me own drama, but things have gotten to a point. I feel like I cannot continue this channel until I spill some tea. So let's get started. Okay, first, a little backstory, a little mice in scene. A little I've never talked about this on my channel before, so this is a super fucking vulnerable moment for me, but I am, in fact, a transgender woman, which may come as a big shock to many of you since with 100 real fish. I get comments all the time from like very solemn people like, guys, I'm pretty sure this is a dude. Great work, detective. You cracked the case. You redoing very good, sweetie. Very, very good. But yes, as one of YouTube's leading bliss transgenders, I am a prime target for cancellation, and I have been cancelled many, many times. And we gonna talk about some of the things we being cancelled for, and some of the things we being criticized for, and the difference between criticism and canceling, because yes, there is a difference. As we go along, I will admit where I have made mistakes because despite how we look, I am not a literal goddess, and I will apologize where I believe apologies are due. However, where I believe that criticism of me is excessive or unwarranted, I will not apologize because here at ContraPoints Industries, we are not in the business of serving bullshit. So the reason for me current cancellation is, in summary, that in me last video, Opulence, I cast transsexual porn star Buck Angel in the role of John Waters. And yes, it's a much better story than the hair vitamin debacle. So notify the drama channels, put in a good word for me, because sweetie, I'm not here to make friends. I'm here to win. So basically, I'm cancelled for collaborating with Buck Angel, and a lot of trans people think Buck Angel is a horrible person. And so me collaboration with Buck Angel is evidence that I too am a horrible person. Cancel culture trope 6. The transitive property of cancellation. Cancellation is infectious. If you associate with a cancelled person, the cancellation rubs off. It's like gonorrhea, except doxycycline 1 to save you this time. Sweetie, look, this whole incident hinges, first of all, on whether Buck Angel is, in fact, a horrible person. So who is Buck Angel? Well, he's a trans man of my parents' generation. He grew up in a world where there was not anything like the visibility and access to information about transition we have today, and where there was a strict medical gatekeeping system in place for people who wanted to transition. In fact, Buck was the first female to male patient his doctor had ever treated. In the 2000s, he rose to prominence as an adult performer, his gimmick at the time being the man with a pussy. But he also became an activist. He wanted to create more positive trans representation within the porn world, and from there he became a more general educator and advocate for trans people. I first heard about him in the early 2010s when I was doing some Googling about some little gender issues I was having myself, although I ended up deciding to remain a female. And Buck was one of the first female to male people I'd ever heard about. And he made an impact on me in part because you take one look at him and you think, honey, that's a man, but he was born a woman. You can do that. So it's not like he inspired me to transition or anything. It's just, it was one of many moments along me whole entire gender journey. So I had positive feelings about Trampot. That's what he calls himself, from back then. And then a few months ago, when I was feeling angry and miserable and despised over another time I was being cancelled by trans Twitter. We'll get to that one later. I saw this post from Buck on Instagram. Dear beautiful human being, I see your pain. I see you're beautiful. You're human being. It is okay that you lash out at me. You do this because I am you and you are reflecting your self-hate to me. I am strong and will be here for you forever and no matter what. This is me intention as a human being to help others. Love, Buck Angel. And then the caption, suffering. That is why the trans community lashes out at each other. I am very aware of the hate towards me by some in the community. They hate on me and others because they are hurt. And those were exactly the words I needed to hear at that moment. So I commented a heart, and then Buck mid me and he said, I love you. And I was like, Senpei noticed him. And so he said, I love you back. Then when I was working on Opulence, I needed a voice actor to do a line from John Waters' book. And it was me co-director, Theron, who suggested, don't you think Buck Angel sounds kind of like John Waters? And I said, well, he just messaged me on Insta. Let's see if he wants to do it. And I just loved the idea of having Buck Angel as John Waters in the video credits. A trans icon playing a gay icon. In my head, it was just so, well, iconic. So I got in touch with Buck about the line, and he was like, yeah, I'd love to do it. So here it is. The 10-second voiceover clip that ruined a month of my life. One must remember, there is such a thing as good bad taste and bad taste. To understand bad taste, one must have very good taste. That's it, children. That's why mommy's cancelled. Now, I was aware at the time that trans Twitter hated Buck Angel, but my thinking was, well, trans Twitter kind of hates every trans. Celebrities certainly hate me. So I wasn't gonna let that stop me. Little did I know quite how vicious things were about to get. Now, so far, I've been telling this story from a point of view, but I don't want to give a fair and balanced account. So I want to pause and contextualize why some trans people hate Buck Angel so much they are willing to cancel anyone who even associates with him. Basically, it all goes back to this old debate in the trans community known today in Tumblr lingo as Truscum versus transgenders. So Truscum are trans people who distinguish between true trans people and fake trans people, who they call trenders or too cutes. Usually Truscum think that what it is to be trans is to have a lifelong struggle with dysphoria, to pursue a medical transition involving hormones and surgery, and to socially reassimilate into your target binary gender, so male or female. Anyone who's not that, according to Truscum, must either be a confused teenager, someone just trying to get attention, someone mistaking their trauma or their fetish for being trans, in a word, a trender. So that's a vis-off transness that usually excludes non-binary people as well as people who don't want to medically transition for whatever reason. And for that reason, this view is sometimes also called transmedicalism, Truscum obviously being the derogatory term for these people. So Truscum are very hated by a lot of trans people because their viewpoint is that not all trans identities are valid, and Buck Angel is widely perceived to be Truscum. So the next question to ask is this true? Is Buck Angel, in fact, Truscum? Now my honest answer to that question is I don't know. He certainly said some things that sound like things Truscum say. I view that. A point he likes to make a lot is that he's transsexual, not transgender. And the difference between those terms is sometimes defined as transsexual implies that you want to pursue medical transition, so hormones and surgery, and transgender does imply that. And people associate this I'm transsexual, not transgender thing with Truscum because Truscum often call themselves transsexuals and say that anyone who is a transsexual isn't really trans. And often those people will be very mean to people they call trenders, especially certain transmedicalist YouTubers like Vanessa LeBlanc and Too Cute Smasher 9000. Too cute Smasher 9000. Thif Smasher 9000. Roast me back, Calvin, I dare you. But I think it's important to keep in mind that the term Truscum is a product of the 2014 Tumblr Wars, and trying to apply to trans people of an older generation can sometimes be misleading. Like when Buckingell transitioned, the word transsexual was just the word for his identity, and he still identifies that way. So when younger trans people tell him it's wrong to use the word transsexual, he feels like these ungrateful millennials are invalidating his identity, and I do understand where he's coming from with that. But I also understand why a lot of non-binary people are skeptical about Buck. Like he says again and again, I'm transsexual, not transgender. Like don't mix me up with those people. And that eagerness to separate himself from transgender people, it comes across as hostility. Like I don't think he's ever actually said that non-binary people aren't valid, but I personally don't like that he seems like he wants to distance himself from them. And that's my disagreement with Buck. It's not that he invalidates non-binary identities, because I don't really see him doing that. And if he was doing that, I would have seen it, because for the last 2 months, a lot of people have been doing nothing but sending me problematic Buck Angel tweets. But as someone who cares a lot about non-binary people, and who loves the non-binary people in my life, it does upset me when he does this distancing thing. And I hope he listens to this criticism, because I think it would be cool if he got better about this. Of course, Buck is technically right that there are different kinds of trans people, and I agree it's important that we can make those distinctions and talk about the differences when they are relevant. But I also think that as a community, trans people benefit from unity, not division. Like, if you have an employer who discriminates against trans people, they not gonna care if you transsexual, transgender, non-binary, or gender non-conforming. They gonna discriminate against you regardless. So we all in this together, and there's a lot of disagreements among us, and we often don't get along so well. But politically, I think we should work together as much as possible instead of splitting into little factions, because we share most of the same interests. And I think the best way to do that is to build bridges instead of burning them. And that's why I'm willing to work with people like Buck Angel, who I have some disagreements with. It creates a connection, you know. And having that connection can lead to communication and build understanding. Also, I need all the connections I can get, Gorge. I am very lonely. It's not a joke. It's true. Now, I get that some people have views that are so harmful, giving them a platform is potentially dangerous. But in any case, I did even give Buck a platform to share his opinions. I gave him a platform to be a John Waters impersonator. A bunch of people on me subreddit were like, why couldn't she just get John Waters to do those lines? Well, first of all, I don't actually know John, but I just have a feeling he would write me off as some kind of tranny millennials joke. Like, why is Buck Angel cancelled but John Waters isn't? Well, because trans Twitter does not know be John Waters is. And let's try to keep it that way. I actually mentioned this to a friend of mine who knows John, and he told me that he and John have actually watched Buck Angel's porn together. So, plot twist. Okay, so trans Twitter won't forgive me unless I condemn Buck Angel as true scum and apologize for ever working with him. But I'm not gonna do that, because I don't think it would be the right thing to do, and doing it just to get myself uncancelled would be cowardly. I am happy to tell you I absolutely disagree with Buck. Divisive rhetoric about transsexual versus transgender. I wish he would be analito the whole transgender umbrella instead of trying to distance himself from the rest. And I'm happy to hear out the perspective of non-binary people who don't trust him, because I totally get where they're coming from and I think that's valid. But I also respect the decades of good activism Buck Angel has done for trans people, and I am grateful to him for that. And in light of that, I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt about where his heart is and express me criticism in a more measured way than just attacking who he is as a person. But Twitter needs to establish that he's a horrible person, because this is the strategy they've chosen to establish that I am a horrible person. And if the true scum allegation is too strong enough to prove it, oh, they have other pieces of evidence to fall back on to hold up their conclusion. For example, here's a tweet claiming Natalie's trying so fucking hard to make it sound like the only thing Buck Angel ever did was write a few iffy tweets, and that's just so fucking far from the truth. Dude launched a targeted tabloid harassment campaign outing a trans woman against her will, with a specific intent of causing her physical, emotional, and professional harm. The shorter way of saying that is that he wanted to make her suffer, and she very well could have been killed. Yikes. This ain't it, Chief. Friendly reminder that this is not good luck. Maybe Don Tree to get trans women killed. Disappointing. It sounds pretty serious. Let's investigate. Here's what we managed to piece together. Scene 1. The year is 2003. Los Angeles, where the movie world, the porn world, and the business scene come together in a tale of heartbreak, betrayal, and transsexualism. La La Land. Dramatis persona. Buck Angel, transsexual porn star. Ilsa Strix, dominatrix, then wife of Buck Angel. Lana Wachowski, wildly successful director of The Matrix, at the time not yet out as a transgender woman. The synopsis is that Ilsa Strix and Buck Angel's marriage ended after Ilsa had an affair with Lana Wachowski, who was not yet out as trans. So Buck was understandably upset about the affair, and in what seems like a petty act of revenge, told a series of magazines that this celebrity director Wachowski was a crossdresser who had stolen his wife, which argues was the information he had at the time. So is that outing a trans woman against her will. Well, in retrospect, it seems like it, though that may not be what he thought he was doing at the time. But to really get to the bottom of this, we have to do some digging. We have to trawl through the dirty details of trans people's personal histories, which I've noticed is one of the Internet's favorite activities. So I actually went on eBay and purchased Rolling Stone issue 991, January 2006, and I'm finally able to reveal that the seller canceled the order. God damn it. But I was finally able to track down and translate a Spanish version of the Rolling Stone article from the Wayback Machine, and I'm finally able to expose the truth. Stop. Freeze exactly where you are. Take a look at yourself and what all of us have been doing for the last 30 seconds. Who does this behavior remind you of? If your answer is social justice advocates fighting for trans equality, you are incorrect. If your answer is creepy stalkers who hate trans people, I am very suspicious of anyone whose online behavior prompts me to dig through articles full of dead names and sordid scandals involving trans people from almost 2 decades ago. This is very similar to techniques used against trans people by internet fascists. So I'm pretty suspicious of anyone pushing this kind of investigation. How can you tell the difference between a trans anarcho-socialist with an anonymous avatar and a Nazi pretending to be a trans anarcho-socialist with an anonymous avatar? Well, you can't. Anonymous is anonymous is anonymous, whether it's on 4chan or Twitter. So unless Buck Angel, Ilsa Strix, or Lana Wachowski gets in touch with me and lets me know that for some unimaginable reason they want me to publicly dig up their 17-year-old divorce drama, this is none of me fucking business. And it's none of yours either. So shut up and go back to Cooey Farms where you belong. Let's Irish up this tea. Doesn't work as well with tea. So setting aside any tabloid drama that may have happened during the Bush administration, I'm saying this in the cuntiest way, and they deserve it. They fucking deserve the cuntiness. I'm spilling whiskey tea all over me garden bathroom. I'm a lady. She's a woman. The main argument against me usually references a college of Buck Angel's problematic tweets. And this is supposed to be definitive evidence that he is a horrible person and therefore that I am a horrible person for collaborating with him. Well, here's the thing though. A college of problematic tweets does not define a person. And I am very used to being defined that way myself, so I know how unfair it can be. Before I ever collaborated with Buck Angel, a lot of people on Twitter were already calling me Truscom. That's been going on a year and a half now. And anytime my name comes up on Twitter, a bunch of people respond saying Natalie is Truscom, Natalie is a transmedicalist, Natalie hates non-binary people, and you should really think what kind of message you're resending to your trans and non-binary followers by platforming her. And if the person defends me or argues back in any way, they say I can't believe you, ignoring the valid concerns of marginalized people. You know, they re-weaponizing their marginalized status as trans people to isolate and attack another trans person. And sometimes this stuff gets to my head too. I start asking myself, wait, am I a transmedicalist? Do I really believe all these awful things they say I believe? But the answer is no, I just don't. These things they were saying about me are 100 not true. You know, believe marginalized people is a norm that is encouraged in leftist spaces for good reason, much like believe victims or believe women. And these norms were established to counterbalance the mainstream tendency, which is not to listen to marginalized people or to victims or to women. But any norm can be abused. Any can abuse. And the blunt fact of the matter is, sometimes marginalized people are wrong. Sometimes people calling themselves victims are obscuring a more complicated situation. People calling the self error and people I'm buying told shock And it's even happened once or twice that a woman has lied. And the accusation that a Truscom is simply false. I mean, first of all, I don't even think of my own transgenderism as a medical disorder, much less everyone else's. I have, of course, collaborated with Dr. Spiegel et al., but it will not have me artistry reduced to mere medicine. Second, this accusation that I hate non-binary people is just. No, no, ew, hell no. My thinking about trans identity has always been informed by non-binary people. I used to identify as non-binary myself before I medically transitioned, and some of the closest people to me in my life today are non-binary trans people, some of whom are also transsexuals, incidentally. It's complicated. I've also made at least 5 videos on this channel arguing for the validity of non-binary gender identities going back more than 3 years. So that's 5 out of around 50 videos, or 10 of the content I've made on this channel is about non-binary identity. A few months ago, I even made a 30-minute video called Trans Trenders, which uses character dialogue to show what I think are the shortcomings of transmedicalism. But there's still hundreds of people on Twitter saying that I'm true scum who hates non-binary people, and their main piece of evidence for that is a collage of my problematic tweets. So let's take a look at that. Here's the 3 tweets that I usually see scrapbooked together as definitive proof that I hate non-binary people. This is the first one from September 2018. From September to says Notice how it's taken out of context from the thread so you can't even see what I'm talking about. I'm sure this is not the experience of many NBs. NB means non-binary people. I leave it to them to articulate what NB existence looks like in a binary world. I do not and I cannot speak for them, but surely an account, God, I used to write like such a nerd, but surely an account that begins and ends with I'm not a man because I don't identify as one is pretty weak. Okay, when I wrote the Twitter thread that tweet has been clipped out of, I was defending myself from accusations that my most recent video at the time, the aesthetic, was anti-non-binary. In that video, there's a character named Justin who defends our version of the performativity theory of gender. And basically, I made this video to express some angst I was feeling about the pressures of transitioning in the public eye. This was a very 1 year on hormones moment for me, and I've already moved on in my thinking. At that time, I was very, my behavior must be perfectly feminine at all times, or else I'm not really a woman. My self-esteem is totally based on sleeping with heterosexual men who resemble me father. Mm. 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 And anyone who knows anything about trans women knows that most of us go through a stage like this at some point, and some YouTubers never get out of it. But personally, these days, it doesn't matter what I wear. It's when I dream they're Lily's dreams. Oh, bragging the Danish girl. Well, Fuck the Danish. I could never abide that sort of person. We all know what I'm talking about. You can tell the whiskey is getting to me because I'm being bigoted against the Danish. These things come out, you know. You get honest, you get real when you get a little bit of the Irish in your system. Did I just fucking put lipstick outside of the fucking lip liner? This is all Lily's fault. Lily Alba. Fuck her dreams. The point is, when I was making the aesthetic, I wasn't even thinking about non-binary people. And people will say that the fact that not every video I make references non-binary people is itself enbophobic. As Ivy said, about 1 in 10 of me videos is about non-binary. But not all of them are. And I feel entitled to make some videos that are just about trans women. But still, some people on Twitter were saying that the character Justiny is a transmedicalist. And because she maybe wins the fictional debate in the video, I'm Natalie Wynn, am therefore a transmedicalist. Here's the thing, though. The performativity theory of gender, the one that Justin defends in that video, is conceptually as far away from transmedicalism as it is possible to be. Transmedicalism says that trans identity is biological, it's neurological, it's hormonal, it's diagnosable and treatable. Whereas performativity says that gender is gesture, it's expression, it's performance, it's a social phenomenon. Phenomenon, 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 phenomenon. Performativity makes no reference to gender dysphoria or to any kind of medical concept at all. So whereas transmedicalism is a kind of bioessentialism, performativity is a kind of social constructionism. So these are exact opposite theories of gender. Are you following along, class? I am not. I am ready to drink Jameson tea until ID. But some trans people felt invalidated by things Justin says in that video. And transmedicalism is another thing that makes them feel invalidated. So they decided that Justin is a transmedicalist and therefore that I am a transmedicalist. And this is literally just bad media comprehension. Like it's a failure to plausibly interpret a video that some people did find genuinely emotionally difficult. And so much of the negative response to that video is just pure emotion. I always hear, I don't care what you intended. Trans people were hurt by that video. You hurt trans people. But here's the thing, just because you were hurt by content doesn't mean that the content is bad or that I'm victimizing you in some way. I'll give you an example. I did a stream a couple years ago with Absment Kink Activist. We were talking about various kinks and we got to DILG, which is Daddy Dumb Little Girl. Basically when consenting adults roleplay age difference and the power dynamic that comes with that. And me and this kink activist, who are just casually discussing what DILG is, what it isn't, when I noticed someone in the chat was starting to totally freak out. They were typing in all caps, like me abuser used DILG to justify raping me. Why are you defending me abuser? I can't believe you'd betray me like this. Please stop taking me abuser side. Please stop. I am begging you. This was actually really fucking upsetting to me because this person was clearly in a lot of pain. They were having a panic attack because they were having a trauma trigger reaction to this conversation. And I kept telling them to leave the stream and take care of themselves, but they wouldn't do it. So I had to block them and then later get in touch and make sure they were okay. Now, was their pain very real? Yes. Was it triggered by the content I was streaming? Yes. But does that mean I did anything wrong? No. Is it wrong to talk about kink in contexts where it's clear you going to be talking about kink? No. But when you produce content online that's going to be viewed by thousands or millions of people, There's always some people out there who are going to be hurt by it. So if you want to argue that a tweet or a video I made is somehow immoral, I think you need more of an argument than just people were hurt. All right, back to the tweet. To this day, people quote tweet the sentence, but surely an account that begins and ends with "I'm not a man because I don't identify as one" is pretty weak. And they claim this is evidence that I'm true scum or that I think people have to prove their identities somehow, which is not at all what I was saying in that thread. What I was saying is, if you were trying to persuade a skeptic that trans identity is valid, simply saying "I'm not a man because I don't identify as one" isn't a very good argument, which it isn't. I mean, no one has ever been persuaded by that so far as I'm aware. That said, I do now disagree with the mindset I had when I tweeted this. Back then, I still delusionally believed that it was possible to rationally explain why trans identity is valid, and I was simply looking for a more persuasive argument than "this is how I identify. You have to believe me, no further questions." But I no longer believe there can be any rational justification of gender identity, which is another reason I'm not a transmedicalist. Transmedicalism tries to be a rational theory about why trans identity is valid, and I don't think it succeeds as that. I don't think anything does. My current opinion about this is that I'm not a man because I don't identify as one is as good, or rather as bad, an argument as any. You know, some things in life just can't be rationally explained. Like love. Why do you love the person you love? Well, because you love them. You could write a poem about it or some gay shit like that, but you can't give any actual arguments. And why am I a woman? Because I'm a woman. That's it. I mean, I can describe me experiences and me feelings to you to help you understand better, but I can't logically prove anything. And I'm super fucking sorry if you can't handle that Mencken was set adrift in an absurd world. That must be super fucking hard for you. Tell me all about it. Next, please. Okay, again we read mid-thread with missing context, but the tweet says, whereas we met 20-year-olds in full-on boy mode who are like, "I am a trans woman." She, her pronouns. So, I guess by including this tweet in the ContraPoints is problematic college, people are implying that I don't think it's valid for someone who presents male to identify as a woman and request she, her pronouns. Well, that's not true. I was surprised when I first experienced this, but I think it's valid. Next. Okay, mid-thread, no context once again, but now you go into these leftist Discord/Facebook groups and like 20 minutes 30 identify as some flavor of trans. Most of them are not conventional binary transsexuals. That seems to be the future. Okay, well, it's true that many leftist Discord servers are like this, but reading this back, I don't like the way the phrase conventional binary transsexuals is hitting me ear. I can see how it could imply that non-binary identities are somehow newfangled, which isn't true. There's been non-binary people for longer than there's been medical transsexuals. In fact, so we'll all call this a bad tweet. I apologize for tweeting it, and I apologize to any non-binary people who felt trivialized by it. Okay, this is the big one. This tweet got its own article in the fucking Guardian. You know, I really wish people would pay less attention to the tweets I spend 30 seconds writing and a little more attention to the videos that I spend, you know, hundreds of hours making. Anyway, let's look at the tweet. This is the most scrutinized paragraph I've ever written, and it's so mediocre. This has happened to me before in hyper-woke spaces, like it's Sun, and a bunch of cis women, and we all have to go in a circle saying she, her, because I'm there. There's this paradox where I can go to a sports bar in North Carolina and be mismammed all night, no question, But in self-consciously trans-inclusive spaces, I have to explain me pronouns and watch woke people awkwardly correct themselves every time they say you guys. I guess it's good for people who use they, them only and want only gender-neutral language, but it comes at the minor expense of semi-passable trances like men, and that's super fucking hard for us. So people interpreted this tweet as me being against the practice of sharing pronouns, which I'm literally just not. Like, I've actually been the person who initiates the pronoun circle many times. The backstory of this tweet is basically that I once got triggered in a situation where I was with a bunch of cis women and we all had to go around saying our pronouns, and like a typical triggered tranny, I tipped it over to Twitter to tip tap type it out. But here's the thing, by the end of this thread, I had already talked myself away from the initial frustration I was expressing. If you know me videos and me voice, then you know me saying, it comes at the minor expense of semi-passable trances, and that's super fucking hard for us is sarcastic. It's a minor expense. It's not actually very hard for us. Gorge. It's fine. But people on Twitter don't watch me videos and they don't to get sarcasm. So people flipped out over this. I was getting dragged, and I made the poor decision to try to solve the tweet problem with more tweeting, which 100 of the time is like trying to put out a fire with lighter fluid. So me and my dumb brain did another short thread trying to clarify what I was saying and defending me right to talk about me own experiences that didn't make things any better. So in a state of anger and frustration, I tweeted out yet another thread. I tweeted instead and this time he said some truly stupid things, including the now infamous line, I sometimes feel like the last of the old school transsexuals. I honestly don't know what the fuck I was even trying to say. I don't feel like the last of the old school transsexuals. I don't even know what that means. I basically mean that offline. I don't have any radical aspirations. You know, I want to be inconspicuous. I want to blend in. And that's what I mean by old school. You know, I want people to assume me pronouns. You know, it's funny because it is very different from the way I am online, where I'm totally shameless and open. I am like sexual confession, everybody. Sexual confession. I have abnormal urges. It's onium. My neighbors can definitely hear that. They know I have abnormal urges now. They already knew that. But offline, I'm an inconspicuous pussy, like a total coward. So, this was a rage thread, and I apologize for tweeting it. Let's go back to bug angle. I'm kind of a conscientious objector to the practice of condemning someone based on a collage of their worst tweets taken out of context. But I definitely do have anxiety about this. Like, I think I'm doing the right thing by not condemning Buck as true scum and evil, but a mean. I could be wrong. What if I am basically sacrificing myself for the sake of a person who really is as bad as Twitter says? Maybe tomorrow he'll tweet, "Fuck non-binary people," and then I'll have fucked up. This whole thing is incredibly stressful, Tom. But I do believe that by refusing to participate in the anti-Buck angle pile-on, I am erring on the morally safer side of things. Because even if he is a little true scummy, excommunicating him from the trans community is still probably not the best approach to take. In my experience, when people accept binary but not non-binary trans people, it usually takes like a 30-minute conversation to win them over to some level of non-binary acceptance. And I'll give you a couple examples. The first time I was ever canceled, like totally trashed on Twitter, was back in 2017, when I had not yet medically transitioned, and at the time I identified as non-binary. And at VidCon 2017, I met up with a YouTuber named June, who had made some videos where she basically mocked the idea of non-binary people. And I posted a picture of the brunch I had with June and some other people, but let's keep them out of it. And people on Twitter totally dragged me for being a peak liberal bootlicker who's best friends with transphobic abusers. Oh, Christ. Fucking people. Man. So fucking frustrating. And you know, I'm not gonna claim I changed June's mind because I don't know what her thought process was, but I did talk to her about non-binary identity, and she did remove her anti-non-binary videos. And I don't have any regrets about that brunch. Example 2. A couple months later, I did a live stream with a conservative trans woman YouTuber named this stream with this woman YouTuber You're very good, Dr. What was her name? Sharon. Sharon. Was it Sharon? I guess she's just not a very memorable person. Anyway, she had made some videos saying that non-binary identities aren't real, but I gave her a chance, and she surprised me by being super compassionate and thoughtful. By the end of that stream, she was pretty much totally accepting of my identity. So again, the point is not that I'm some kind of persuasive genius. If I was a persuasive genius, maybe I could talk myself out of being cancelled. The point is that sometimes people who seem ignorant or hateful just need to be given a non-judgmental space to learn and grow and think. And to just condemn them as hopeless bigots actually prevents that growth from happening. And Sharon, despite her, totally forgettable personality, turned out to be an incredibly open-minded person. Like later on, she actually made an apology video to non-binary people, and I became good friends with her, and we worked together on most of the videos we made this year. Until she ruined my life by recommending a canceled John Waters impersonator. I guess the moral is never talk to people you disagree with. It will only lead to pain. Will only to pay. I do think there's something off with me hormone dose. Like I'm crying 3 times a day. Oh, and I can't come unless there's vibrators in at least 3 of my holes. It happens like once a month. There has to be a full moon. I honestly only still bother because it numbs the pain for a few moments. What I'm trying to say is I really do believe in conversation, which means hearing out multiple perspectives. I don't want my audience to get all their information about trans people from and I think it's important to listen to criticism. So I encourage my audience to go watch some non-binary YouTubers who have criticized me and criticized Buck Angel. For example, go check out non-binary YouTuber Luxander's video about man and non-binary YouTuber Corviday's video about Buck Angel. I think YouTube as a platform is better at producing criticism rather than canceling, and I think that's because, at least in the vlog format, making a video forces you to confront the fact that you're a human being with a face and a name who can be held accountable for the things that you say. But people on Twitter, it's a different story, and I think it's time to take a look at what canceling really is. I've given you enough context now for you to understand what I'm about to show you, which is what I saw on me timeline every day for nearly a month. All these tweets are from the aftermath of me uploading Opulence 2 months ago, when the Buck Angel scandal first broke. And someone better hold my hand now, because this gets ugly. Hey, if any of you still support ContraPoints after her bigging up and collaborating with notable turf favorite and true scumbuck Angel, you no friend to gender non-conforming, non-passing, and non-binary trans people. Fuck her, and fuck her fucking rift. I am absolutely furious right now. Weird how I'm 30 and trans and manage not to be a true scum. Maybe I'm just some kind of anomaly. Or maybe ContraPoints is a conniving, rat-fucking capo who could do with a fully wound back into the mouth. Since I am out of Twitter jail now, I just want to say fuck ContraPoints, her sycophantic stance, and all her bread tube chums who close ranks to protect her after she throws the rest of the trans community under the bus for profit. Natalie and Wynn is a fucking grifter. ContraPoints videos are now just style over substance, so that explains why she took TOTERF ideology so well. ContraPoints working with true scum now definitively proves that pretty much everyone defending ContraPoints just hates NBs and are also true scum. Legit gonna start unfollowing peeps that continue to follow ContraPoints at this point. Do know me warding of pretty much everyone. I know there are some that were probably blindsided by this somehow. So long as you know that ContraPoints is true scum, you re safe and cool. Eat shit Natalie. For someone who used to identify as genderqueer, we expected more from you, but aguous when your head's this far up your own ass, it's hard to consider others. ContraPoints more like disappoints. That's a good one. If you gonna drag me, at least be funny. Fuck Buck Angel. Fuck ContraPoints. Fuck any real transsexual. Fuck your grift. Here's what hashtag ContraPoints stands. Don't understand. If Natalie refuses to accept that she has an apology to make and continues profiting from it, it will become our responsibility to work on deplatforming her just like every other racist, sexist, bigoted content creator. No one has actually suggested or attempted to actually cancel her. But the longer this goes on without an apology and commitment to do better, the stronger the case becomes for actively working to deplatform her. So in other words, no one has suggested we cancel her, but we should cancel her. Great. Can everyone finally agree that ContraPoints belongs directly inside a garbage can? Here I am, sweetie. ContraPoints collaborating with Angel Buck. Angel Buck. Thanks for letting us all know that you had no idea who he even was until Twitter notified you what to be outraged about. ContraPoints collaborating with Angel Buck, a trans medicalist who once outed a trans person to try and destroy them, and supporting him because he looks and sounds like a proper man is a small, itty-bitty, tipsy-topsy fucking mistake. This is a huge deal. ContraPoints could be literally collaborating with Hitler. We have a Hitler comparison. Could be literally collaborating with Hitler today. And he all would be like, oh well, she's just a little flawed, you know. Fuck off. Can Natalie Wynn stop being a coward and commit to being a transmit? It's really tiring to watch this happen every week. Natalie Wynn is a spoiled brat who refuses to take accountability. Anyone who supports Natalie Wynn does not support non-binary people. Natalie Wynn is such a terrible person. My God. Every cis and non-binary person who thought Natalie Wynn was trans now owes me and every non-binary person $50. Joe Biden has a better position on the validity of non-binary gender than ContraPoints. My opinion is that ContraPoints really sucks a lot and I don't like her. I hate ContraPoints so goddamn much it's unbelievable. ContraPoints be like excuse me non-binary people. This is a very good impression of them. You redoing very good, sweetie. You redoing very, very good. Buck Angel is a turf apologizer, bootlicker, and true scum. Any association with him must be seen as hostile to the trans community as a whole, let alone denial of non-binary existence. That's the line in the sand, folks. Where do you stand? And here we fucking air, dude. Buck fucking Angel on ContraPoints. E-tire ass. What? This is Natalie. Natalie is a trans medicalist. This is Natalie's friend Lindsay. Lindsay is a left tuber. Natalie and Lindsay are still friends because Natalie and Lindsay are both cowards. Left tuber is a griv. Oh, and they made me the man. The shade. Issues that arose with being in Contrast's new video. Her video on TERFs make no sense now. Her video on trans trenders make no sense now. You know, if your interpretation of why a cast Buck Angel totally contradicts the videos he spent hundreds of hours making, do you think maybe your interpretation could be wrong? Apparently not. Her apologies completely void. sends a message that she hates non-binary people. She is reckless with her content, positives that arose from Buck Angel being in Contra's new video. She has $400,000 this month from Patreon. 400,000. This number is completely made up, like it is exponentially wrong. $400,000. $400,000 a month. Hot take. ContraPoints is the leftist PewDiePie. Personally, I like to characterize her as the Blair White wolf in leftist sheep's clothing. Reminder that ContraPoints is a piece of shit who still has not apologized for platforming true scum and is actively taking their side. Anyway, if you still support ContraPoints, get the hell away from Mung. Pee pee poo poo. I'm ContraPoints and I can't stop being a trans medicalist and shitting myself in public. Valid criticisms of marginalized people. Fuck ContraPoints. Fuck true scum. ContraPoints is a 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 true when you repeat the same fucking sentence over and over again. It doesn't when you repeat the same sentence over and over again. It actually does to get more persuasive. In fact, it might get less persuasive because true things usually only have to be said once. If you still support ContraPoints, unfollow me immediately and never interact with me again. In conclusion, fuck Natalie Wynn and fuck everything she has to say. Okay, let's get started. So that was just a sample of hundreds and hundreds of tweets. And all of this, let me remind you, is over a 10-second voiceover clip and a 48-minute video about a completely unrelated topic. Like, how do you work? How do you create when a decision so trivial can become the main event for weeks of your life? And the tweets are just the beginning. After that, there's the Reddit threads and the YouTube comments and the Facebook discourse and the Medium posts and the Newsweek article. Opulence is a video meander and spent hundreds of hours carefully piecing together. I think it's my best video. And to have the response to it completely overwhelmed by one minor casting decision is heartbreaking and infuriating to me. And it's left me with much less energy to create new things. But here's the thing, people on Twitter saying mean things about me is not the worst of it, not even close. Like, I'm a politically opinionated trans woman who publicly transitioned while making anti-fascist content on a notoriously right-wing platform. Aha, sweetie, I am so used to reading mean things about myself online. Most of you probably can't even begin to imagine how used to it I am. And the way you psychologically survive in that situation is you block the people and platforms who are harassing you and you pay it no mind. But there's some things you can't block. And a big one is you can't block people from going after your friends and colleagues. And that is exactly what people did to me at the height of the Buck Angel incident. Lindsay Ellis, Oli from Philosophy Tube, and Bombergoy all got inundated with tweets demanding that they publicly disown Ma'am, a person they've all been friends with for years, or else. In response to demands that she apologize, Lindsay released a statement where she said, "I was not involved in Opulence. My name was mentioned in it, but I did not participate in the production. Therefore, with regards to calls for me to apologize, I have to ask, apologize for what? There is only one logical answer. Apologize for being friends with Natalie." And here's a response to her statement. "I don't need to consider you me fucking friend to disagree with beliefs you knowingly solicit or allow on your platform. Same with Contra. It just means you are willing to allow awful ideas to fester for the sake of financial gain, which is fine, but it makes you a piece of shit." And here's a comment at Bombergoy. "I doubt that you are gonna read this, But can you please just tell us your thoughts on that whole situation so we could at least know that you were on our side? We don't want to have to cancel all of the all and cause bread to go into a schism as a result of this. Thank you. Nice YouTube channel you have there, friend. Would be a shame if someone cancelled it. Oh, so fucking sinister. Olia PhilosophyTube released his own statement affirming his support of non-binary people, but adding sadly, I've also been harassed, threatened, doxed, had me private life speculated on, and me loved ones insulted. In recognizing the feelings of those who kindly raised their concerns in a polite way, I do not wish to legitimize the great many people who use their hurt as a cover for unacceptable, toxic, and abusive behavior. And here's some responses to Oli. As a non-binary fan of yours, I'm disappointed in this non-apology. Again, what exactly is he supposed to be apologizing for? Ever having associated with him? Thinks we are going to criticize Oli of PhilosophyTube for being a sniveling, hypocritical piece of shit refusing to listen to trans people, actively, openly, and repeatedly mocking the trans people he refuses to listen to. Thanks for the apology. Now stop endorsing ContraPoints. Now keep in mind that what these Twitter people are doing is demanding that cis people publicly condemn a trans woman for loosely associating with another trans person. Does that strike anyone else as wildly inappropriate? Even Mia Mulder, a trans woman who is never publicly associated with me, got attacked because she tweeted a heart at Oli, after he made the post discussing being doxxed and threatened. And just for that, she gets put on the enemy list. I am sad to say that Mia is on the list of people that have stood by ContraPoints as she's continued to be a bigoted piece of shit. To which Mia responds, stood by ContraPoints. Jesus Christ. No matter what I do, people call me out and I'm not even related to the video and I don't even know Natalie. The chain of guilt by association is so long and twisted I can barely even follow it. So they re going after Mia, who tweeted a heart at Oli, who failed to condemn me for me voiceover casting of Buck Angel, who was retweeted by Auturf. We re only missing a couple degrees of separation before every living person on the planet Earth is counseled over the Buck Angel situation. And several colleagues of mine, by the way, Lindsay, Harrioli, they all took a financial hit over this. They've all lost some Patreon support. One of Lindsay's former supporters even demanded a $38 lifetime refund, saying, Dear Lindsay, I'm sorry for being pushy, but I really am going to be needing a refund. I gave money to your operation under the pretense that you wouldn't to do anything morally objectionable, and supporting ContraPoints and blaming us for taking issue with that is, in me opinion, immoral. Please respond. I hope she sent it to them in pennies. So look, I am very grateful to me colleagues for sticking by me through all this. But I am also aware that I am becoming a burden to anyone who associates with me. I have no collaborators in this video. I am working on this totally alone because I'm aware of how radioactive I am right now, and I don't want to contaminate anyone else. During the height of this most recent canceling, a creator I admired made me to let me know. I cut the shout out to you in my last video because I was nervous to draw the ire of your detractors, who were getting genuinely scary, but I wouldn't want you to think I was disavowing you, regardless of how many people are asking me to. Jesus Christ. The situation here is that any cis person who defends him, or even associates with me in any way, will be labeled a transphobe. Any binary trans person who associates with me will be branded an infophobe. And any non-binary people who associate with me will be ostracized from their own community. So on the internet, I find myself increasingly alone. I am isolated by the harassment. And that is ultimately the point. To exile me from a community, from any community. And it's all because I refuse to participate in doing exactly that to buck angle. My experiences have made me so disillusioned with the idea that social media call-outs can lead to any kind of justice that I've essentially sworn off participating in them. There's a fairly prominent figure in leftist politics who could absolutely hashtag me too, but I'm never gonna do it because I have no faith left in the process of call-out vigilante justice. And I'm not saying I'm totally against me tooing people, because I think in some cases it totally is the brave and admirable thing to do. But in me case, I feel like I just know too much about the dark side of social media shaming to ever want to participate in it again. You know, I feel like the story would end up being taken out of me control, warped and twisted in all kinds of unpredictable ways. It would end up just haunting both me and the person I'd be accusing, which in this case, honestly, neither of us deserves. So I am just not willing to take that risk, except maybe in some very extreme situation, which this just isn't. It's not worth it. And likewise, when a mob is at me doorstep demanding a condemned buck angel to save myself from cancellation, no, I'm just not gonna do that. I'm a conscientious objector. I'm willing to go to Twitter jail for this. Take me away, boys. Oh, oh. If there's one thing I can't stand, it's BreadTube videos. Part 8.5. Pap pandy The philosophy of being fucked in the ass. Oh, I have done this to YouTube. And I'm sorry. So look, canceling is not criticism. It is not holding someone accountable. It is an attack on a human being. In this video, I use the word canceling more or less synonymously with what feminist Joe Freeman, author of the Bitch Manifesto, calls trashing. And I've linked her essay Trashing, The Dark Side of Sisterhood, and the description. It was originally published in Ms. magazine in 1976, but it is a perfect description of what goes on trans Twitter today. It is not disagreement. It is not conflict. It is not opposition. These are perfectly ordinary phenomena which, when engaged in mutually, honestly, and not excessively, are necessary to keep an organism or organization healthy and active. Trashing is a particularly vicious form of character assassination which amounts to psychological rape. It is manipulative, dishonest, and excessive. It is occasionally disguised by the rhetoric of honest conflict or covered up by denying that any disapproval exists at all. But it is not done to expose disagreements or resolve differences. It is done to disparage and destroy. Whatever methods are used, trashing involves a violation of one's integrity, a declaration of one's worthlessness, and an impugning of one's motives. In effect, what is attacked is not one's actions or one's ideas, but one's self. And that's what distinguishes trashing, bullying, or abuse from criticism or holding accountable. Criticism attacks your actions or beliefs. But when people are canceling, they re not bringing up my problematic tweets because they want me to revise me beliefs. No. What they redoing is accumulating evidence to support the case they've decided to make that I am a horrible person who must be shunned. You know, the only sense in which I am, as they like to say, the new Blair White, is that I think I actually have now snatched Vanessa's crown as the most hated tran on Tran Twitter. Vanessa, I'm trying to feud with you. Feud with me, goddammit. You can't have a one-sided feud. I don't want to be one of those trans YouTubers that just drags other trans people all day and they never respond. That would be really pathetic. The new Lacey Green, That's the other one. The newest in a series of women you've decided to treat like supervillains. Maybe reflect on that habit a little bit. And supervillain is the right word. Like, I'm the bad guy, do. I am the enemy. And what do you do with the enemy? Well, you disavow, disown, deplatform, and destroy. As that one tweet put it, that's the line in the sand, folks. Where do you stand? If you adequately demonstrate your searing hatred of Natalie Wynn, then you re safe and cool. But if you don't, you re on the wrong side of the line, sweetie. And you too are now the enemy. Are now and you to your cancel culture trope 7, dualism. Certain ancient religions teach their followers to understand the cosmos as a struggle between light and dark, good and evil. And cancel culture does more or less the same thing. It's binary thinking. People are either good or they read bad. And to add to that essentialism, if a person says or does a bad thing, we should interpret that as the mask slipping, as a momentary glimpse of their essential wickedness. And anyone who wants to remain good had better be willing to publicly condemn anyone the community has decided is bad. There really is something dystopian about this. You have to be willing to accuse other people to prove your own innocence. That's the line in the sand. Folks, where do you stand? In the most extreme version of this, all bad people are equally bad. So collaborating with Truscom means you may as well be Truscom. And of course, being Truscom is tantamount to being a TERF. And on trans Twitter, it is a known fact that TERFs are nazis. And this implies that nazis, TERFs, Truscom, people who associate with Truscom, people who fail to condemn people who associate with Truscom, people who offer emotional support to people who fail to condemn people who associate with Truscom, all of them must be treated the same way. Deplatform her just like every other racist, sexist, bigoted content creator. A fully wound backhand to the mouth. I recently read a book by Sarah Schulman called Conflict is Not Abuse, Overstating Harm, Community Responsibility, The Duty of Repair. Basically, Schulman's argument is that in various contexts, from romantic relationships to community infighting to international politics, the overstatement of harm is used as a justification for cruelty and for escalating conflict. So, for example, and this is my example, not Schulman's, TERFs fix it on the exaggerated danger that trans women supposedly pose to cis women. And in very classic overstatement of harm, they all describe everything they don't, like as rape. Trans women entering women's spaces is rape. Trans women existing, Janice Raymond, is rape. And then they use that exaggerated harm as a justification to retaliate against them, to dox and harass and shun. Well, the same kind of logic is used to justify abusive behavior within the trans community. The dualistic thinking, the essentialism, the pseudo-moralism. All of this allows people on Twitter to treat me in an obviously abusive way, all the while feeling like they redoing the right thing, because they re-attacking the enemy. And I realize that some people will say that I'm the one who's overstating harm to evade criticism. Well, look, you've seen the tweets. The furious demands for me to be exiled, the doxing and threatening and ordering around of me colleagues, the attempts to isolate me from a community, the attacks not on me actions but on who I am as a person. There's not really anything ambiguous about this. It's just abuse. But I don't think it feels like abuse to the people who are doing it. They feel like they're punching up because I'm a celebrity with a platform and lots of Twitter followers. And it's true that I do have more power than any of them individually. But as a collective, they have a terrifying power that they don't seem to be aware of as individuals. As John Ronson, author of a great book on public shaming, put it, I suppose that when shamings are delivered like remotely administered drone strikes, nobody needs to think about how ferocious our collective power might be. The snowflake never needs to feel responsible for the avalanche. And that's how you get these situations where you have hundreds of people endlessly bashing someone who's already been knocked to the ground and feeling all the while like they repunching up. You know, there's actually a kind of power and safety in anonymity and obscurity. And there are many ways that being a public figure makes you really vulnerable. For example, you are more vulnerable to doxing, stalking, and harassment on a scale that most people probably can't even imagine. You are vulnerable to having your reputation permanently degraded in a way that people who are posting anonymously or pseudonymously are pretty much invulnerable to. And a lot of the people who are attacking me, they re not pausing to self-reflect. They re not holding themselves accountable for the consequences of their actions. They re just venting their unfiltered rage. But in response to these attacks, I, as a powerful person with a platform, I'm not allowed to react like a human being. I'm not allowed to get angry. I'm not allowed to show pain. I'm not allowed to get defensive. I'm not allowed to lash out. All I'm allowed to do is go totally numb on the inside as I try to frantically calculate the ideal public relations response that pays due deference to the valid concerns of these poor, marginalized people, all the while ignoring the tsunami of verbal abuse that's crashing over me. You know, people on Twitter, they don't try to persuade me like I'm a human being. They order me around. They tell me what to believe. They demand that I say exactly what they want me to say or else. It's extremely objectifying. They don't treat me like a person with me own opinions and feelings. They treat me as this like brand of moral commodity to be consumed or denounced. And this is all terribly ironic because of the conflicting demand that creators be authentic all the time. One thing that always frustrates me about these situations is there's this demand that you apologize instantly, and there's this perception that a fast apology is more sincere than a delayed one. But in fact, the opposite is true. It takes longer than a couple hours to cool down, lower your defenses, listen, learn, grow, seriously reflect on what you may have done or said that was wrong. That can take days or weeks or months. I had to do me October AMA stream for Patreon, and at the beginning of the stream I gave my emotional half-formed reaction to the Buck Angel situation. And some traitor on me Patreon transcribed that part of the stream and disseminated it on Twitter just to instigate another round of canceling. You re not allowed a chance to think or feel. And because supposedly the best thing to do from a proper perspective is to apologize immediately, canceling produces a lot of insincere bullshit apologies from people who haven't in fact learned anything. And I think most people are aware of that. In fact, I think the demand for an apology itself is often insincere. If you being cancelled rather than criticized, then the line in the sand has been drawn. You and all your kin have been declared the enemy. Apologize to Twitter. At this point, I may as well apologize to Fortune. Dear Fortune, I am super fucking sorry I called you thin-wristed otaku shitweasels who like looking at pictures of little girls. I have been trying to educate myself and learn from my mistakes, and I now realize that's only 70 of you. Once you re-cancelled, you can really do no right. If you apologize, the apology will be declared a manipulative attempt to save face, and in fact it will be used as further evidence of what a Machiavellian psychopath you really are, if you try to explain or defend yourself. I mean, first of all, you will almost certainly dig yourself in deeper. But even if you re-articulate and correct, you will still be seen as unable to take criticism and as ignoring the hurt of marginalized people. And if you just go silent, you will be seen as a coward fleeing accountability, even though there's lots of reasons why you might go silent. Maybe you retaking a few days away from social media totally to cool down and think clearly, or maybe you re so overwhelmed by the harassment that you've just shut down. Let's do shots. Who wants to do a shot with him? Do you want to do a shot with him? Let's do a shot. A tequila shot is my favorite. I like the whole salt, tequila and lime ritual. It's just very satisfying to me. It's okay, let's get started. You feel warm right away. You know that feeling where it's like, oh, hey, how are you, happiness? Hey, how are you? Feeling that life is worth living. Live that, I feel life is very worth it. It's a good moment. You really like, oh, this is okay. This is gonna be okay. I can get through this. That's how it starts. To watch out for that. So look, I really don't like to represent myself as a victim. That's not really a narrative that I identify with. But for the purposes of communicating what effect canceling has, I feel like I should say something about the pain. Much of the happiness that you might expect to come along with success has been taken away from me by this constant fury that surrounds me. Try to think about this rationally. I'm a Libra sun, Pisces moon. Being cancelled is hell for me. You know, I want to be liked by everyone. And I'm starting to think I might be in the wrong career for that. In a way, leftist Twitter finally accomplished what fortune, Nazis, stalkers, and TERFs have been trying and failing to do to me for years. They've made Twitter into a platform so hostile to me existence that I've decided to leave it forever. And they demoralized me to the point I could barely get out of bed for a month. That for the point and I know that sounds really melodramatic, but I'm just trying to be honest with you about what a melodramatic person I am. I find I have trouble convincing people of the severity of the pain that being cancelled causes, because I think it's just hard to imagine it if you haven't been through it yourself. And I don't know a more succinct way to convey it to you than by telling you that in the last few years I've been harassed by Nazis, I've been harassed by TERFs, I've been stalked, I've been doxxed, I've been threatened, I've been sexually assaulted. And the pain of being cancelled, of being totally trashed by other trans people only for years, has been more difficult for me to cope with than all the rest of it combined. Joe Freeman actually describes how I feel better than I think I can describe it myself. I was one of the first in the country, perhaps the first in Chicago, to have me character, my commitment, and me very self-attacked in such a way by movement woman that it left me torn in little pieces and unable to function. It took me years to recover, and even today the wounds have not entirely healed. This attack is accomplished by making you feel that your very existence is inimical to the movement, and that nothing can change this short of ceasing to exist. These feelings are reinforced when you are isolated from your friends. As they become convinced that their association with you is similarly inimical to the movement and to themselves, any support of you will taint them. Eventually all your colleagues join in a chorus of condemnation which cannot be silenced, and you are reduced to a mere parody of your previous self. Yeah, That just about sums it up. Now, as it happens, I am going to survive this because I have very deliberately built a support network that will be there for me regardless of what only trans communities say. And I have very deliberately done it that because early in me transition back in 2017, I relied very heavily on the only leftist trans community for all kinds of emotional support. You know, when you early in transition, I mean, it just sucks. You feel like the whole world is against you. And I talked about this a little bit in my last video, you know, feeling like a freak show walking down the street. And even if you're lucky enough to have a supportive family, it usually still is gonna take them a while to come around. At first they don't get it. They say things to you like, "Aren't you worried you all regret this?" And they struggle with your name and pronouns, which is understandable, but at the same time, it makes you feel like you're not being seen for who you are. So you need a kind of second family that understands how you're feeling and acts happy about your transition and validates your gender. And for the first couple months of me transition, I found that in this world of only transgender leftism, well, that didn't last long because, well, I was, what, 2 months into me transition when first I did an interview the journalist Jesse Single, and then I agreed to do a debate with Theron and Vanessa. So that's a long story, but in short, I associated with a string of people that trans Twitter considers the enemy. And trans Twitter tore me apart over this, and it completely broke my heart because I was really leaning on basically emotional support from strangers online, which seems really stupid in retrospect. And after they turned against me, I decided, one, that I was never going totally on this group of people again, and two, that I was going to have to find acceptance elsewhere. And in retrospect, I think this actually may have been good for me in a roundabout way because I was kicked out of the safe space, and I dropped that mentality. And so basically, I was thrown into the deep end of reality and forced to sink or swim. And I don't know if me transition or me channel would be where they are today if it hadn't been for that trial by fire. Are we swimming through fire, or are we mixing metaphors? The point is, I'm more armored against canceling than I was 2 years ago. And the reason why is I have acquired a certain level of privilege and security and independence from any one community so that if one community cancels them, I still have somewhere else to go. You know, the people who are most vulnerable to cancel culture are not white gay comedians. They re not James Charles. They re not me. They are marginalized people who feel like they have nowhere else to go when they rejected by their community. That means struggling trans people with a few hundred Twitter followers. It means a lot of sex workers. It means people who totally rely on activist circles for emotional and material support. I'll quote Joe Freeman one more time. I had survived me youth because I had never given anyone or any group the right to judge me. That right I had reserved to myself. But the movement seduced me by its sweet promise of sisterhood. It claimed to provide a haven from the ravages of a sexist society, a place where one would be understood. It was me very need for feminism and feminists that made me vulnerable. I gave the movement the right to judge me because I trusted it. And when it judged me worthless, I accepted that judgment. What? There's a really irritating point that people on the left like to make that goes, well, canceling doesn't really end anyone's career. Cancelled people usually get a new job or keep their platform, so I guess it's not really that bad who. I think people say this because they're trying to mitigate any sense of guilt they might feel about how they're treating people because it's a really stupid argument. There's lots of things that don't tend your life that are still terrible, but also there's cases where canceling has ended someone's life. On December 5th, 2017, a porn star named August Ames killed herself by hanging in a public park after being canceled on Twitter over a homophobic tweet. On December 3rd, she tweeted, "Whichever lady performer is replacing me tomorrow for Eroticox News, you is shooting with a goo who has shot gay porn just to let you know. Ziz all I can say." Shrug. Do agents really not care about who they representing? La direct I do me homework for me body. So they never worked in porn, so I can't really tell you what the norms are around women working with men who have done gay porn. But the tweet certainly sounds homophobic to me, and that seemed to be the consensus of other industry people on Twitter. So Twitter did its thing. People in August's community called her a homophobe and lashed out at her. And as always happens, plenty of passersby jumped in to throw tomatoes at the woman in the stocks. Over the next few days, August tweeted several more times, going through the usual stages that you go through when you being cancelled. First, she defended herself. She claimed most other women in the industry feel the same as her. Then she said she's bisexual and therefore she couldn't to be homophobic. Then she said, fine, I guess I'll be fake and not have opinions then. Then she started bemoaning how mean Twitter is, and she got really defensive about her right to choose who she has sex with. And she lashed out at the people attacking her. And then, in her final tweet, she just said, "Fuck we all," and went to the park that night and killed herself. This is all so familiar to me. I feel like I am able to relive with her each stage of this emotional process. There's that first moment when you realize the outrage is beginning and you get that sinking feeling in your stomach. And then the anger feeling misunderstood. And then the bargaining, the fear, and finally the shame and the despair. And here's the thing. I totally agree with her critics that her tweet was bad. Of course, she has the right to say no for any reason, but she publicly expressed this in a homophobic way. But she was still a person who deserves to live. And I think there's gotta be a better way to deal with these situations than just trashing someone until they kill themselves. And I know it's never as simple as Twitter made her kill herself. There's always other things going on in the background. But the point I'm making is, canceling is more dangerous to marginalized people because marginalized people generally have more things going on in the background. John Ronson did an investigative podcast about her death, and it goes into how she was sexually abused as a child, abandoned by her father. She was living with a boyfriend she was kind of emotionally detached from. And a few weeks earlier, she'd filmed a scene with a guy who was unnecessarily rough and mean and who mistreated her. So she was kind of traumatized by that. And so she was kind of on edge and really defensive about who she worked with when she was tweeting. We work Then the backlash happened. And since she had no other support network, she probably felt like the only community she had turned against her. And that's a really painful feeling. She must have felt so despised. Which is how V felt for the last 2 months. I feel despised and burdensome. And I can imagine how a person who feels that way could have an impulsive couple hours where they think their best option is suicide. I mean, I can more than imagine it because I've been there myself. And I'm still here because at those moments I've been with good friends who took care of me. And by friends I do mean X and X. But Ivy also survived because there's a lot of people on the internet who'd be very entertained if I killed myself, and I simply refuse to give them the satisfaction. Oh no, bitch. I intend to live as long as possible out of sheer spite. I mean, who needs a guardian angel when you can make it through Christmas after Christmas on the fumes of total contempt? What I am really trying to say is Merry Christmas, you goddamn shoals. Oh, holy night, the stars are bright. The shining mio, 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 mio. To get my lesbian pleers out again. Have a super fucking happy new year, bitch. How am I gonna get this bathtub out of me apartment? Anyone in Baltimore want a bathtub? Leave a comment if you want a bathtub. If you want a bathtub, All right, I need to take a deep breath because let's be honest, I'm about one crack away from attacking me own Twitter followers with an umbrella. I am about one breakdown away from going on a rampage and making a suit out of woman's skin. Just kidding. I would never do that. Though on a bad skin day, I've given it serious consideration. Oh, I'll be fine. I've gotta sober up anyway because I'm having more plastic surgery in a couple days. And plastic surgery, that's about the only thing holding me together at this point. YouTubing, this is a healthy profession. This is great. Anyone want me job? Step right up. All you have to do is make informative and entertaining videos about extremely controversial topics while of course representing the full range of experiences in the LGBTQ+ spectrum and being perfectly woke and irreverently funny. Well, go on. I'm waiting to be entertained. Feed me, mother. Oh, don't mind me. I'll just sit back and pour another glass of wine. Oh, and I will, of course, be obsessively scrutinizing every word you say for any hint of moral transgression as well as critiquing your look, you third-rate cross-dresser. 0 out of 10. Get off me stage. You successfully spilled that everywhere. That's good. I do still want to talk about why people cancel and the effect that it's having, but it looks like there's gonna have to be a part 2 gorge because I have hit me limit. So why don't we all cut our losses and try again in 2020? I realize that people on Twitter aren't actually gonna watch this video. They just gonna make fun of the title and how long it is, which fair enough, but they really ones whose accusations against me are so numerous and convoluted it required a feature-length film to respond to. But yeah, they gonna see the title and they gonna transcribe quotes out of context. And they gonna say, I'm a fascist. I'm a turf. I'm true scum. I'm the new Blair White. I'm the new Lacey Green. I'm a cis bootlicker. I'm an enlightened centrist. I, I shitlib. I'm my heartless grifter raking in millions of dollars over the bodies of dead. I'm the I am a disease. Why am I sad? Why am I the deal? They go to say I am a to deal by I. Why oh I am done with deal way. Why am way away they go to deal. Well, I am a deal. I am like I am you. I am why? Mask off, yikes. This ain't it, Chief. Friendly reminder that this isn't a good look. Maybe done to be a cis bootlicker. Disappointing. But they re-saying all those things already so inoculated. See, their mistake was completely breaking me spirit. They should have left a little piece intact. But it's good, it's good, it's good. Because basically me survival from here on out hinges on my ability to not care at all what people say about me online. So, here's to not giving a fuck. This is almost a Norma Desmond cosplay, which is good because I'm not gonna age gracefully and it's the best to get into character now. YouTuber stars never do.